Good morning and welcome to the Monday edition of News Express, brought to you by Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. This week's paper comes with a whole lot of interesting headlines, and we'll be getting right into it in just a moment. Nigeria lenders dominate West Central region in Africa's top 100 banks rankings. We have Zenith Bank's top performer with Tier 1 capital up 18% to $2 billion. We have First Bank, Access Bank, UBA, GTB straddle list. But South Africa, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria lead continent's top 10 banks. That's the very first story on Business AM, top in the paper this morning. The Nigerian leaders failed to list a single firm on stock exchange. And a bullet headlines just underneath, we have since 1914, when Nigeria's journey started, no ancient, no modern leader understands how market works. Experts say government firms or assets cannot be securitized. Let's move over to the summary section now. Better energy taxes for revenues. That's talking about the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. They are saying that Nigeria, that's Africa's largest economy, and other developing countries could raise much needed public revenues while cutting CO2 emissions and air pollution, of course, by making better use of energy taxes and reducing energy subsidies, of course, according to their latest reports. That one continues on page 3 of the paper. And we have on page 10, startup funding opportunities. Check that one out on Business AM, page 10. And in the energy, power and renewable section now, Nigeria, solar energy oasis. And then we have digital transformation lags and wheat versus cassava opportunity. Catch these on pages 29 and 24 of Business AM. All right, let's bring in Philip Isakba now. He's the publisher of Business AM for more insight into the headlines. Good morning, Mr. Philip.
Yeah, good morning, Rachel.
Thank you for joining us. How was your weekend?
Weekend was good.
All right.
Watching the economic space.
All right, I'd like us to begin our conversation with a headline about the failure of successive governments since 1914, particularly after the independence, according to the headline, to run a modern, forward-thinking and progressive economy, of course, with a mind to grow asset value through the instrumentality of the stock market. It's true that we've got, debt capital all over the country. In fact, we have one aspect of which PwC estimated at $900 billion in both residential and agric real estate. Talk to us about, let me mention even the NNPC talk, the NNPC, the LNG, these are also big ticket government-owned enterprises and they are not listed on the NSC. How worrying should this be? Talk to us about this.
We should be very worried. Now, Rachel, we have been through this for decades. I'm not talking about 10 years. I'm not talking about 20 years. The democracy this time is 21 years. And we've had government for a long time. And I think it was in the 70s. I don't know when the indigenization program took off, when government took over some international companies, and forced them to live in the days of apartheid and so on and so forth, when they wanted to fight against the apartheid regime in South Africa. Now that's aside, you would think that over time, we would have wisened up, to understand the difference between economics and politics. I have told you before that politics trumps everything else in this country. And I've told you, Rachel, recall that we talked about once an election is over, you start facing economic realities of the country,
True.
And begin to deal with what you have in your hands. Now, what this story is about is that, when PwC came up with the estimate of $900 billion, locked up in debt capital, everybody shouted, we have a budget deficit of 5 trillion naira. not an awful lot when you compare it with with $900
billion.
$1 billion. So what it is that there is quite a lot. You can harness. If people in government are thinking beyond politics. Face the economics and look at all that you can find within your economy to deal with what you have in your hands. Now, with that capital that PwC talked about was mainly about real estate, was residential and agricultural real estate. Some of that will be residential. Government is all over the place trying to build houses. But you will find that in agricultural real estate, some will belong to government, obviously. But we're not talking about all of that. We're talking about assets. That government just continues to hold. To itself. Keep to itself. For political reasons. And you can release all of that. And you can make the money that you want to make. NMPC alone. If you were to think economically, have an economic head in your thinking in your head, you will find that just releasing a little of NMPC, will give you a whole lot of money. What we're talking about here is that government does not even understand what it has in its hands in terms of going to the market with its assets, and you see, there's what they call, analyst Ayo Teriva, who gave insights, for us to develop this story. We talked about what you call assets that are useful. You just keep assets, they are useful, but you cannot convert them to financial assets in terms of securitization. So for instance, we have a 49%, LNG that people they push about as poster boy or poster girl for investment, or how you run a good company in the energy sector. Nigeria has 49% of that, and I think the other foreign companies have 51% of the company, and that's why they always produce the managing director, obviously, and then they manage it, and we collect dividends from the, but it's assets that is not security. You cannot securitize, because you have not taken it to the market to find out what value you really have in your hands. You don't know the value. You can just be making money from the trading that is going on until you put the assets in the market and get a valuation for that asset. You won't be able to know what the value is. Go to Saudi Arabia recently. What happened there? Was it last year, 2 years ago? Last year in particular, 2019, 2020, when they took Aramco to the market, Aramco was just a fraction of Aramco that was taken to the market. And it's now the most capitalized, what's it called?
Right. So
in the world.
We can't rightly say the government does not understand, the workings of the market. They have information about these things. They even have experts, working, on behalf in MDAs and all of that. So why have they refused to list these companies? Is it an issue of trust on the NSE, or is there something else?
It has nothing to do with trust on the part of the NSE or on the NSE, but everything has to do with politics. Politics, in a way, even if you can have officials, you can have officials who probably understand the market, who can advisors who can throw in some information that they need to take on board, but politicians who take the decisions, when we say they don't understand, because if an expert is talking to a politician who is not responding the way you think he should respond, then he doesn't understand what you're telling him or her. So that is basically the point. That they ought to take this asset to the market. And Rachel, we've talked about this for years. I've been in this financial journalism for quite a long time, and I know how this issue has come up again and again and again and again. Whether tech is pushing this or NSE is pushing that some assets should be brought to the market. Do you recall that privatization, that exercise that has gone on for a long time, was supposed to be that after initial privatization, that government and some of the assets are privatized, and then government still keeps some holding, some equities, and it was supposed to be that after some time that they will come to the market, they will be brought to the market. But what has happened? Once the privatization is concluded, some of the companies just went moribund anyway. Or some were sold that nobody cares about them again. You can talk about all the paper mills in Nigeria. You can talk about Okuiboku, the newsprint manufacturing company that was sold. You can talk about the Ajokuta that we had crisis for so long. That until they are beginning to now do one or two things about it. But the key thing is that perhaps you need political will, but you need understanding first of all, and then you need political will to support that understanding. So that's what this story is about. That Nigerian leaders, can't find money, through other means, apart from borrowing through ways and means from the central bank. There are assets that can be that can securitized. By putting financial value to those assets and then create securitization for them. Because with that securitization, your ability to even go for loan facilities will become even easier,
right.
Because they can place value on the assets that you own and that you have, but somehow politics gets in the way of so many of these things. So that's what the story is about, and I hope that government officials will take notice and begin to lift their heads from the sand.
Let's see how it goes. Let's turn our attention to page 24 of the paper, talking about wheat importation worries and the opportunities in cassava flour. Yes, we are aware that Nigeria requires, a high volume of wheat flour to sustain demand. Of course, we are seeing local production failing to satisfy a rapid demand. So has cassava flour come to the rescue in this regard?
Again, we're trying to open up opportunities. Whether government wants to take what's been said here on board or not, but also it's about the private sector. Also looking at what possibilities exist. But the key thing is that the driver, the creator of that enabling environment for these things to happen still remains government. But we talk about this in terms of markets. So globally there's a wheat lobby, driven by the United States of America. So don't be surprised that what you have going on domestically in terms of not pushing alternative to wheat, that we try to do in cassava flour. It could be a lobby coming from the United States. All the way the wheat farmers in the United States are a powerful lobby. If you research, you'll find the influence that they have on the Nigerian wheat market. So that's a key thing. Nigeria needs to learn how to play the market. The commodities market is such that you cannot continue to be, for instance, a primary producer, and not think of how to add value to your primary produce. The same thing, what we're talking about, to produce cassava. We are the largest, we are recognized as the largest producer of cassava in the world. Obasanjo tried to push that policy, by trying to create a system where cassava will be introduced into bread making or bread baking. Jonathan tried to do the same thing, but all these things it's just almost like scratching the surface. There's quite a lot to be done here. Understanding the commodities market beyond just producing primary produce, and then either you consume the primary produce at home or you just export them, outside. I haven't seen cassava. There's cassava starch, for instance. Leaving the alternative it provides to wheat. Cassava being the largest producer of the world, you should expect quite a lot of things happening on cassava starch. If you get to know the amount of imports in terms of starch import that comes in, you can easily be producing in your country because you have cassava. You'll be amazed. So with regards to wheat, we are looking at it in terms of the opportunity it offers. Where wheat importation is becoming worrisome. We talked about. We talked about lean forex earnings, that has made it difficult for importation of all sorts of things. Recall the 41 or the 42 items that are banned from central bank providing forex to import into the country. So here is an opportunity that you have. Why don't you, bend down? Bend over the research that you need to do in terms of how you can find an integration, and make your cassava flour better, for use for as a substitute for wheat.
Right.
That helps to reduce the volume of importation and then the foreign exchange that you spend.
Right. Now, readers can also turn their attention to page 11 for a rundown of the markets in Nigeria from last week. And yes, for January as a whole on Business AM. Thank you so much, Mr. Philip. We'll get back to you on Friday for the weekend edition of News Express.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for having me.
And that was Philip Isakwa, the publisher, Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper.